Let's bring in Alex Young. He's a professor at UCLA. Welcome to the show. Hey. How are you doing?
Good, yeah, nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for taking the time to come down to the show in the studio. Why don't you introduce yourself first?
I'm Alex Young. I'm a professor in statistical genetics at UCLA Med School, and I'm also an advisor to Heresight, a company doing advanced genetic testing in IVF.
Yeah. What drew you to Heresight in particular?
Well, I had a realization that this technology, so the technology that they've developed is applying genetic testing to embryos so you can predict their disease risks or traits. I had a realization that that was a very powerful technology and an incredibly important application of a lot of the research that I was doing. But, you know, there were already some companies in that space, and I didn't find any of them that serious about doing really innovative R&D. And Heresight actually approached me in 2023 with really an intriguing idea to develop an algorithm, and I kind of couldn't resist doing that, so I decided to get involved, and we ended up creating some good technology.
What have been the key milestones in embryo selection technology? Like, how much of it is machines in the lab, better data collection, versus more on the algorithm computational side?
Well, I mean, IVF has been around for a while, and genetic testing in IVF is not new. So, you know, I think even back in the 90s, they were doing like sex selection to avoid certain sex-linked diseases. And there are other tests already developed, such as PGTM, which looks for like Mendelian disease genes. So they're like, you know, cystic fibrosis or something like that. And then also tests to look for chromosomal abnormalities, PGTA. So those tests were more about being able to get like a lot of that was lab innovation, being able to get the genetic data from the embryos. Now, this new wave of technology that Heresight and some of the other companies are developing, that's grown out of the research program in human genetics, which is much more computational. It's been enabled by the massive drop in the cost of sequencing technology that's happened over the past 20 years. So that's created huge genetic data sets, these big, what we call biobanks, places like UK Biobank was like the flagship one, where you have like 500,000 people with their whole genome data and all of their medical records and things like education as well. So that's enabled us to create these predictors called polygenic scores. And they're the things that we can now apply in IVF, and that's sort of more of a computational aspect than a lab aspect, I would say.
Well, give me some history on the UK Biobank. It feels like a big step to share that much information publicly. I assume it's somewhat anonymized, but what are the considerations with sharing genetic data and associated traits? Obviously, there's a medical benefit, but how do individuals grapple with that trade-off?
Well, UK Biobank kind of took a much more liberal attitude towards allowing people to access that data. So, you know, it's kind of sad, actually, that so they were kind of the first big biobank, and it wasn't originally designed purely for genetic data. It was designed for sort of medical epidemiology, and then they added genetic data to it. And they made it very easy for both companies and for academic researchers to access that data. And it's had, you know, 100x the impact of other biobanks, including, you know, the US has been quite behind, actually, in that respect. And a lot of other genetic data sets are really hard to access and you're actually barred from accessing them for commercial uses. So, yeah, I would commend UK Biobank for taking this more liberal approach that, you know, you have to protect the, you know, informed consent and privacy of the participants, but I think sometimes the restrictions that are put on other data sets really have hampered the development of, you know, both the sort of research side, but then also the commercialization of genomics.
How powerful is the technology these days? Like how how good are we at detecting diseases? I imagine that there's some diseases that we're very good at. What's like the best case study right now?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're talking about in the sort of IVF context,
Sure.
where that's most powerful is diseases where you have a particular gene, a particular position in the genome that has an outsized effect on the risk of that disease. So if you look at something like type 1 diabetes or Alzheimer's, there are certain genes in the genome that have a really large impact. And if you're if you're a couple and one of you carries one of those major risk genes, then doing this embryo selection can drastically reduce the risk. It can probably pretty much eliminate the risk of passing on type 1 diabetes, for example, and drastically reduce the risk of passing on Alzheimer's disease. Now, there are other what we'd call more complex diseases like type 2 diabetes or various cancers. And, there it's a bit less effective, but it can still be quite effective. You can, roughly say half the risk your offspring gets some disease. And if that disease is present in your family history, then that can be quite a substantial absolute risk reduction. So you could go from something like, 20% risk of type 2 diabetes to 10% risk in your offspring.
Yeah. What's the progress? Has progress been faster on the screening side or on the actual drug development and treatment side? I mean, we've seen the peptide boom, the GLP-1 boom. There's a new major biotech acquisition every few days now. It feels like the pace is accelerating in actual drug development. But what are you seeing actually being unlocked by new technologies?
Well, yeah, human genetic data has been incredibly important in drug development. You've seen big pharmaceutical companies like Regeneron. They hired a lot of the best people from. I was at Oxford for my PhD, and like a lot of the best people from Oxford ended up getting hired by Regeneron to set up like a big new genetics center, and they've amassed like a huge data set there, like 10 million people or something now. Yeah. And that's definitely driving like target discovery in the pharmaceutical industry. So that's been where a lot of the investments come. The sort of IVF and screening side has been maybe a more neglected part of the potential of human genetic data. Partly, I would say, for political and ideological. There are a lot of people who are opposed to this technology. Sure. So I suffered some career consequences for getting involved in this industry myself.
So what happened?
Well, when it came out that I'd been involved in Heresite, I mean, some people said some unpleasant things about me, but I don't really care about that. But I also had some collaborators pull out of a paper I had in review at Nature, and I also had a job offer rescinded from a top U.S. university. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, how are you splitting your time these days? Well, I'm mostly doing my academic research, but my main contribution to Heresite was this algorithm that we developed and we're trying to get published now. So yeah, my involvement is more as like an advisor now, but I did make a sort of key technological contribution. Yeah, what does an algorithm like? Are we talking about like machine learning, transformer-based AI? What or just some statistical model? Like what goes into honing an algorithm that actually moves the needle on predictability? For predictability, it's more kind of statistics and machine learning than AI. Like it turns out that you don't need these very complicated kind of like nonlinear models that transformers and large language models are particularly adept at. So, for example, creating this, like Heresite created this very powerful genetic predictor of IQ, much more powerful than anyone thought was possible. And that was sort of, they used some like deep learning based models to kind of create better curated data, psychometrically curated data. And then when you're actually creating these predictors, this is basically, it's kind of like a Bayesian statistical model where you're using functional data, so information about which genes are likely to affect the trait to improve your estimates. The algorithm that I developed wasn't really on the prediction side. This was more to lower the technological and regulatory barrier to accessing the technology. And this was a machine learning model based on hidden Markov models. And this basically turned sort of a routine test. So there's a routine test for aneuploidy, for chromosomal abnormalities such as Down syndrome. And this algorithm enables the data that's produced for that routine test to then be used to give a comprehensive genome profile of each embryo. And one advantage of that is that that test is done as routine in like 60% of IVF cycles in the US and worldwide. And it also kind of puts the power back in the hands of the couples undergoing IVF because of HIPAA legislation in the US and GDPR in Europe. You actually have a legal right to that data. So you can just request that data from your clinic in whatever country you're in and send that to Herosite, and then that enables you to get all these disease risk predictions and trait predictions like IQ from a routine test. So there's two different sides to where the algorithms come in. One is creating these predictors, and the other is actually how do you get the genome data on the embryo, because that's not a trivial technical problem either.
Where does the FDA stand on this? Where do they fit in? How do they actually regulate tests? Walk me through all that.
So in the US, the IVF space is pretty unregulated.
Okay.
I think it's because...
Is that good?
Well, I think it's on net good, because if you look at the
like, I'm normally pretty against regulation, but
this is a big decision.
It feels like maybe an area that you would want more government involvement.
Well, I guess my take on this is that in an ideal world, you'd have a kind of light touch regulation that ensured some unscrupulous players were kept out of the market. Like, I know you had Nucleus Kian on here before, and they've had some test results that look pretty misleading to me. And you'd want to make sure that misleading test results are not being given out to people. But my concern with any kind of regulation is that it's going to suddenly evolve into something that just completely kills innovation. Like, this is basically impossible to do in Europe, for example. So all of the companies doing this are US-based, and that's partly because it's a pretty unregulated space. So it's enabled this industry to actually grow here, whereas it's not possible in other countries.
Do you think the industry is ready for venture capital?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess...
And I ask that because it feels like there's a lot of promising work being done, but unclear that anytime you involve large amounts of venture capital, then people have various growth expectations, and decisions get made that maybe wouldn't be in the long-term interest of patients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a risk, but there is a lot of demand for this product, and I think that we're still in the sort of infancy, and part of what's holding this industry back is we kind of need more money to be put into it. We need more awareness of the potential of this technology, and Herosite, that their revenue's been growing pretty well. They're trying to do a big raise this year. I think that there could be kind of a preference cascade here. Like, a lot of the people that have been, a lot of the customers so far have been, people from the tech world, people that are quite wealthy, and I think that's going to create a lot of demand as people see these wealthy and sort of elite people wanting these services, and I think everyone else is going to want them. So I think it's poised for a big growth spurt.
Is one of the big challenges the feedback cycles, where you have models today that are making predictions about outcomes that won't happen for decades, and so it's hard to gauge basically accuracy of predictions if we basically just need to wait and see?
I mean, that is a concern that the predictions might, based on historical data, might not perform as well in the future. I mean, I think that is not a concern that's exclusive to this kind of technology, though. Like, a lot of what is done in medicine is based on randomized controlled trials that were done decades ago, and I don't see it being hugely different here. one good thing about this technology is that rather than having to do this big, long, it's sort of impossible in a way if you wanted to do a randomized control trial for some kind of late onset disease, you'd have to wait like 60 years for people to get cancer or something. So it's basically like impossible to do that. But nature has sort of provided us with a natural experiment that recapitulates a lot of the properties of a randomized controlled trial. So this is related to my academic research in that so embryos are basically siblings genetically. And if you can predict genetic differences between siblings, then you can be pretty sure that that's going to also translate into predicting differences between embryos. So it's a bit, and that's kind of the technical standard that we've tried to establish at Heresite, that you need to validate all of your predictors carefully in predicting differences between siblings within family. That ensures that you're getting like a causal estimate of what these predictors are able to do. And yes, there might be some differences in the future, like if the environment changes drastically, there's some different environmental effect that puts someone at risk for cancer. It might not capture that so well. But that's just the nature of the game in a way. We have to use the information we have now to make the best predictions we can about the future.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with the health system broadly? I mean, have you done IVF yourself? Have you dealt with advanced medicines or anything beyond the normal Advil after a long weekend?
Yeah, well, I am actually a cancer patient, which is
sorry.
So I've had a lot more dealings with the health system than I would like.
Yeah. What have the learnings been? What's the process been like?
Well, one thing, I actually had to do fertility preservation
Okay.
before undergoing radiation and chemotherapy. So that actually made me feel a lot more pro IVF.
Sure.
Because basically I had to freeze my sperm
Yep.
and basically now I can only reproduce through IVF.
Yeah.
So that dovetails a bit with the work I've been doing with Heresite. But yeah, I mean, have
you been tracking? I mean, it seems like you're very capable of doing research on your own. Have you been doing research into your own cancer to understand it at a deeper level? Do you feel like there's more self-education happening now? Are you in a unique position there?
Yeah, I have a bit. It's one of those things, like I've seen, these stories about people kind of using AI to sort of figure out, some sort of mRNA vaccine for the cancer.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, I can't remember what the guy's called.
We had him on the
GitLab
show with the
guy.
dog.
Yeah. No, that was quite an inspirational story,
Totally.
and I've talked to some of the people that have been working with him recently about that, and I think the standard way that sort of oncology is approached, it doesn't seem to be as patient-centric as it could be. It's not like, are we going to throw absolutely everything we can at curing this person? It's more like, we're just going to sort of follow the standard playbook and wait until something really bad happens. Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely potential for people to take more agency with serious conditions like cancer and using genomics and AI to enable that, although it's not trivial to do that well. I mean, if you're a billionaire, it helps. You can get all of these experiments done that are not standard. But actually doing it well, I don't think it's not as simple as just plugging your data into an LLM and then you have a cure,
Yeah. What's the bigger bottleneck? Like more larger data sets that are publicly available for like the English biobank, or is it more computational or just general intelligence?
Well, I think in terms of cancer, it's probably more making clinical trials easier.
Okay.
There's this movement online, and there's clinical trials abundance movement.
Sure.
It does seem to me that, like in the US especially, clinical trials are very expensive. Like there's a treatment that I am trying to access that they're doing the phase 3 trials, for example, in Australia instead of the US because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Then there's and then trying to get into a trial is like threading a needle,
Sure.
So I think that making it easier for patients to access cutting edge treatments and just.
And then even if you get in, it would be placebo controlled, so there's a 50% chance that you don't get it. Is that right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where wearing my scientist hat, I'm like, oh, it's really important to do placebo, properly controlled trials so you can make the right inferences. But then when you're the patient,
side.
you're like, I don't want to be in the placebo. I'm like, what's the point in that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we heard about this with GLP-1 trials, where the drug's so effective, people would realize they're in the placebo and then just drop out of the trial entirely.
Right, yeah. I mean, I was thinking that about this trial. I was like, well, if it's probably going to be pretty obvious I'm in the placebo because I don't have any side effects, and if it's just not working, then why not just drop out? But they kind of expect you to just keep on going in these trials when things aren't working, which also doesn't seem to be particularly in the patient's interest.
Yeah. Well, what's next for you? What do you want to focus on?
Well, getting cured of cancer would be nice.
Yeah,
but,
that seems like priority number one.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this whole reproductive tech space.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of potential. We're really in the infancy of this industry. So what Heresite's been doing with the polygenic scores, they've created very powerful predictors with that. But these polygenic scores, they only capture a certain fraction of the total effect of the genome on disease risk and traits.
Yeah.
So actually, a lot of the remaining signal that we could get out of the genetics is in these rare damaging mutations that are not typically included in these scores. And that's one of the things that Heresite's been working on. There's an important application of AI models like AlphaFold, Alpha Missense,
Sure.
And sort of DNA foundation models to try and predict what these rare what risks these rare mutations might confer.
Interesting.
And including, Heresite have already developed a product looking at how you can predict risk of neurodevelopmental disorders using these kind of rare variants. So I think that's going to be an important area going forward.
Yeah.
Then, there's more further in the future kind of technologies, in vitro gametogenesis. So that's a technology to create gametes, so sperm and eggs. Eggs is what would be more useful generally from adult cells that are not gamete cells. So that could potentially create thousands of embryos. So I think you could, and then there's also gene editing actually. So you can use CRISPR or some technology like that to go into an embryo and edit particular base pairs, remove some disease-causing variant, or maybe more controversially, enhance some ability. Like you could put in the Tibetan altitude adaptation gene that Nim's dye has, or you could put in a sprinter gene or something.
Sure.
So I think my idea for the future of this space could be that you have this kind of stack where you have in vitro gametogenesis that creates thousands of embryos. Then you can get the genome data, do the predictions of disease risks and traits from that, select a few promising embryos, and then do some edits in them. Yeah. So that kind of excites me. That
sci-fi. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us. We appreciate you having the time. Good luck with everything.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Have a good rest of your day.